I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a book club podcast. And we've got a special guest today.
That's what I was going to say.
Say it then.
Oh, we got a special guest today.
Hello.
It's Caitlin.
This is Caitlin Edge, a friend of ours from high school, a sister of a friend of the show, Courtney Edge, who we've talked about, I think, maybe once before.
We've definitely talked about
their father, Mr. Kippy, the one and only.
And I'm actually Caitlin Brashear now.
Oh, sorry.
Very true. She is a married woman now with a different name.
But Edge is still my middle name. I have 2 middle names now. So
Oh, you're one of those fancy people.
I'm very fancy, and I totally answer to Caitlin Edge because I think Edge is an amazing last name.
It is a great last name.
It's a really good one. But I'm very excited to be here. So I'm glad y'all let me come.
I was talking to Will about it before you got here, but I was really excited to have your perspective, just because it is kind of heavily romantic, without being a romance novel. It's about his
it's about 2 people on different sides of a relationship.
Right.
They wanted to get a girl's perspective.
Presumably a loving relationship.
And I mean, as we were talking about it seemed like a lot of the same things about him creeped you out.
That creeped y'all out?
Yeah, I mean, at least it made me not like him as much.
I'm kind of indifferent about him so far, just because I think, like I said before, I think we know 2 things about him. And those are the only 2 things that, he's defined by these 2 character traits, which is not a full character. And so I'm kind of like, well, is there anything else that we learn about him? Or is he just an undeveloped nothing character?
Does he have greater depth? So those 2 things being that
he suffers from rage, and that and he even talks about himself being indifferent to most things before meeting Layla. That he's just kind of coasting through life, and, he's had success in his market speculation business that he does.
Yeah.
But even that, he just uses it as an addiction to distract himself from things.
Yeah,
and so he's just kind of an indifferent.
That something he liked even about himself.
Yeah, he didn't want to let Ellen or Layla know about how successful he had been with it.
That's one thing that's weird, though. For such a successful, driven person, you'd think that there'd at least be he wouldn't have be bored or mundane. But I guess that doesn't necessarily dictate your happiness. If you're busy,
he seems to be sort of. He's just super adept at it, because whenever he first describes getting brought into it by Harry, his friend, he was really excited about it. He's like, oh man, this is really exciting, and I get a real high from doing it. And then maybe he was just so good at it for so long, because it's now been 20 something years since starting doing it, that maybe now he's just burnt out on it to a degree.
Yeah. Well, and he said that he's officially made enough money that he doesn't have to work again. So maybe he's not chasing after anything anymore in his job.
True, yeah.
So it has lost he's lost some of the thrill that would come with acquiring that kind of wealth, because
there's nothing
apparently
new now.
And he has everything that he needs. I think something that is key to his character is just how big he apparently is.
He's 8 feet or something. They constantly have to talk about how he ducks under every doorway.
And they very casually mentioned that Layla's shoes could fit inside his, and that was the first first time in the book where they really clearly mentioned how big he was. But for a grown woman to be able to put her shoe easily inside somebody's shoe.
It said her size 5 and his 13.
Yeah, he's at 13. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I guess at 13 isn't the most.
Is that
giant
American or European size?
Oh, see, I don't know.
That's also
it
another
definitely
thing.
is European.
Because if it's a size 13 American, that's a big fucking shoe.
It's
Alex
big
was 13s.
Yeah, and
Alex
he's a big dude.
He is also. Alex is really tall.
But
when I think about Alex, I think his defining feature is his feet.
His big feet. But I'm familiar with size 13s. I've never seen.
That's a weird thing to say.
I know. But I've never seen a shoe fit in there. So.
Well, and a size 5 is pretty small. It's that big.
Yeah, it is really.
So.
And you can, depending. There's this. I feel like we're getting a little too involved in this conversation, but you can also the shoes. I could fit. I one time forced my shoes into Reed's shoes, just so I could wear 2 pairs of shoes at the same time.
Yeah,
but they said her shoes easily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so it's almost like they were doing it to cutesy save space. Look, we only need 1 shoe space for both of our feet
in their little cabin, maybe.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. Aren't they trendy and what are tiny homes?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was thinking.
So Finn, he is all those things that you said, they do talk about him being kind of a playboy of sorts. He's casually had many girlfriends, he's had apparently a handful of serious girlfriends that we know about.
They were all successful businesswomen, right?
Right, but then it sounds like in addition to that, he's also just had
different escapades
relations. So he's kind of a player, which maybe that just comes with having.
Yeah, that might just be part of that sort of like rock star market business London lifestyle.
Can you be a rock star if you're like a British or an Irish?
Are they just not all rock stars over there?
I don't know.
Wasn't that what the British invasion was? It was just all the rock stars, just the general population coming over?
I get it now. The book makes sense to me.
The Beatles weren't even good at music. They're just British.
They're literally just British.
Literally.
But yeah, I think that at least the way that I saw that was just the nature of the business that he was in, and him and Harry definitely did party. And even he says, like, on occasion that he was just really tired of it, and that's part of why he fell so hard for Layla. Was just like, this is somebody that is not anything of this, like, you know, kind of like uniform life that I've been living.
He's essentially a country bumpkin coming.
Yeah, he comes from a small island up in Scotland.
His relationship with Harry got soured like his senior year of college, right? Like, that's like 20.
No, he was already through college.
Okay.
If he did go to college. I don't even remember. He did go to college, but I don't remember him graduating.
I want to say it was like his last year of college for some reason. I don't know why it so specifically rings to me that
because he was with that chick with the extremely Irish name.
Siobhan. Siobhan, yeah, I actually knew what it was.
Oh, okay, yeah, because you listened to the audiobook, so I was just reading and I was like, bro, I'm not going to try.
Siobhan? Nah.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
she was really cool. She could speak like Gaelic too.
Right.
Yeah, she called her family on Skype, and I was just sitting there like, oh my god, that's so cool.
They gave you that in the... Jeez, that's not in the...
No, this was a person, a woman I knew.
Oh.
I knew it was Siobhan.
Did he get the extended cut?
Right.
Because I just checked it out
some
at the
character
library.
development that we did not get.
Yeah, the totally pointless Skype call with Siobhan in Gaelic.
But so he's dating her in college, and then she cheats on him, tells him.
Right.
That's his high school girlfriend, isn't it?
Was it a high school girlfriend?
I thought Siobhan was a high school girlfriend.
Maybe.
I
don't know.
Now I'm all slipped up.
I had the feeling that it was
pretty
in college.
sure it was I thought it was a high school girlfriend because that was when...
Because then her brothers come and talk to him, and they don't get in a fight. She says, or they say, like, if we see you again, you know, very, you know, classic Irish thing. Yeah, we're gonna bust your kneecaps. So that's when Harry then gets him out of Ireland.
Okay,
brings him to London.
Maybe it is college then when that.
But why would Harry bring? Oh,
Harry was his brother's friend.
Thank you. No, I was trying to figure out the time. Wasn't Harry the one that was cheating?
No, that was just That was
his old
Finn's best friend. Yeah, back in Ireland.
See, I just viewed
Harry was his brother's best friend.
Oh, see, I turned to Harry and
Harry and Finn started becoming close because Harry started looking out for Finn after Finn's brother died in a motorcycle accident.
I missed all of that for somehow. Okay, thanks. That's why I was asking, because I wanted to clarify the timeline.
And that's one of the several examples of Harry being such a savior for Finn, and Finn being very appreciative for everything that Harry's done for him.
Yeah, I thought it was a little odd that, like, it almost seemed... Because, like, in my head, Harry was both the best friend that had cheated,
you thought it was, like, way more complicated.
I thought they had a very confusing relationship as friends.
And with the way that everybody is cheating on everybody so far, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a point where we find out that Ellen and Harry had slept together.
There's something with Harry and Ellen. Yeah, there's for sure something.
Because they got really close before Finn and Ellen get together. Mm-hmm. And Ellen was, like, living with Harry in London to try and, like, get a job because she's an illustrator or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then Finn and Ellen get close, and so then Ellen moves in and blah, blah, blah. So, with just, like, this seems like that sort of story where everybody is sleeping with everybody. And that's part of the intrigue.
That's the lifestyle. But so I thought for sure Harry and Ellen, but then I also thought separately of that Harry and Layla may have had something. I think they have some sort of connection too. And Finn thinks that Harry never liked Layla, but I think that it was because there's something else going on there.
Okay.
Yeah, like maybe Layla represents the same thing to Harry that she represents to Finn, you know, something just totally different from this lifestyle that they're stuck in, more or less. And so he sort of becomes infatuated for the same reasons, and then is hostile because of those feelings that he has. Maybe that's the person that Layla sleeps with when she goes on that London trip.
That's what I thought. That was my first thought, was that it was Harry, and then that's why she's of course she'd be weird about that, but why she's extra weird about it, because she doesn't really seem to me to be the type of person, without really knowing her, who would go away for a girls' weekend and sleep with somebody. So I feel like it's somebody that she knew, she had some kind of history with, because I just don't see her doing that.
Right.
So that was why I thought Harry.
Just like even in general, statistics show that, you know, you're way more likely to have an affair with somebody that you know than with somebody that you just met.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And
especially for her, she comes to the city. She's never done that with anybody before. She's only been with one guy. It just doesn't... Yeah. There's something that just doesn't add up there. So that was why I thought...
You can sort of see the argument to just be like, you know, while you're drunk, unless the whole trip is premeditated to some degree for that, which would be a little... I feel like that'd be a little extreme. But, you know, if you're drinking and you're thinking, God, I've only ever had sex with this one dude... It would be really interesting to see what it's like. You let that slip to your friends that you're with and like, well, let's just go grab that guy over there, blah, blah, blah. And so maybe, but I agree that I think it makes more sense that she would be feeling that way and then go seek out Harry while she's in town.
Harry or somebody else some character that we haven't met yet. Yeah. There's some history there.
For the trip being premeditated, because she was planning to go on her trip, I definitely think that, she had to know the person probably. Because, I think she was planning to go and sleep with somebody on this trip. I don't think that was an accident.
I don't know. I mean, and maybe she had...
I don't even
maybe
know
it's
if
something
she necessarily had a girls' weekend.
I think in general that...
wanted to... Something else?
Maybe so.
Sorry, I didn't even let you talk.
And I think in general, whenever you do that sort of thing, you probably do plan it to some degree, or at the very least, you're thinking about it for a long time. You know? I think for you to just suddenly decide that you're going to cheat and then have the opportunity to do so, those are two things that have to coincide, and the chances of that are pretty slim in general. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking already about it, or even if you're just coming to the terms with the fact that you might be someone that would be willing to cheat, it's already on your mind. Yeah. So there is a level of premeditation to it. I don't think that the trip was designed for it.
Yeah, I think it just... I agree. I think it just happened.
I can't see him interrupting a girls' weekend if that was the actual plan.
Well, I don't think he interrupted it. I think she sought him out.
Well, that's the weird thing too. Is when have you ever heard of I mean, I just can't imagine her doing that on a girls' weekend. Leaving to go have sex with some guy. I definitely don't think that it was a girls' weekend.
Here's what happened.
Tell me.
So she's planning to go on this girls' weekend. That's been planned for a while. She's going with the girls to London, and she and Harry talk occasionally, and she tells Harry oh yeah, we're gonna be in town this weekend. We're doing a girls' trip, and Harry's oh, we should meet up or something, catch up, because they haven't seen each other in a while. And I think that's what happened. So there was maybe some level of pre-planning involved, but it wasn't directly not actually having a girls' trip. I'm just going to see this dude. We also don't know if that's actually even a story that we've just decided.
Yeah, we've created this entire narrative. It's going to turn out that it was just some rando from the bar.
But that I could see that being a realistic scenario. So there's some casual mention of her coming into town, and he's like, "Oh, you're going to be in town. We should meet up." And it's on the outside looking in, a very innocent, "Oh, you're going to meet up with your friends, with your boyfriend's friends, these young catch up, blah blah blah." That's what I think. Okay. If in fact it is not a rando from the bar,
right?
And if, in fact, she actually even committed that act of adultery.
It would be strange for that to be a lie, though.
Yeah, it would be real weird.
There would have to be some sort of twist that we can't even think about right now that would have that make sense.
Well, and see, that's what I need from this book. Because the writing is very simple, and... I feel like I need more. There's something that's just missing. And so I'm hoping that there's some crazy wild twist that we
yeah. That's definitely what I'm hoping for, and was hoping for going into it, was just it to just be kind of crazy and just a thriller, you know?
Yeah.
Things not expected.
And then that's not quite what it's been yet.
So far it feels like
it's all been introductory, because now we've got, we know the characters involved. Mm-hmm. We're relatively familiar with them, though mostly with Finn, obviously, because it's all just been through his eyes so far.
Yeah.
And the thing this happening, the catalyst, trickles in and then hits with the big reveal that it's, I mean, aside from literally saying it's Layla, we now know that it's Layla who's come back.
Yeah.
And so now what does that mean and what happens from here? That's where the meat of the story is going to be.
Yeah.
So, like in most things, it starts out a little bit slow. Although it's just, like Caitlin was saying, it's just really simple right now. Finn seems to be, for all of his prowess in the markets, he's a little bit of a dullard. It's just like not being able to catch on to it being Layla. And maybe it's just because it's a story, so I'm expecting it to be something. I was like, it's got to be Layla, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about the email address. I knew right away that the first part of it stood for Russian doll. Like, I figured that out very quickly. I couldn't figure out the
It's a
second
little
part.
heavy-handed, especially with all the Russian dolls popping up.
Right. So
I was so ready to just okay, no, you're right. It's your friend Russell or whatever.
Rudolph. So I knew that like right off the bat. I was like, okay, this is not a person. This is what that stands for. I couldn't figure out the second part because that one was a little
Pharaoh Hill or whatever.
because I had forgotten about that. Yeah. But when he was like, "Oh, it's clearly Ruby and the dolphin," I was like, "No, you're an idiot." And he's just a big dumb man-child, and he makes me uncomfortable because of that. Because I think he's, I don't like
people that are relatively incompetent, or at least just don't have a lot of common sense and stuff like that, make me feel that way too. They make me extremely nervous, and I don't like dealing with them. And even at work, if I'm in a client interaction, I'm like, oh my god, you're just a fucking idiot. It makes me uncomfortable having to deal with them. And
on top of that, he's clearly capable of being pretty dangerous. Like
he seems to have a lot of self-awareness about it, though. Like obviously, when he hits the blackout, he's blacked out.
Yeah.
Right.
But he knows when it's coming, and we've seen him bring himself away from it now multiple times.
We have seen that, but we've also seen him talk very casually about beating his best friend to a bloody pulp. Mm-hmm. And he has he doesn't seem to have, he doesn't seem to care about that to me.
And I wonder if it's also just part of, because he also did, like we already talked about, he described himself as being very indifferent to pretty much everything for a lot of his life.
Yeah.
So if maybe he is just sort of like an idiot savant and, is very good at the markets and stuff like that, but in the rest of his life is, maybe on the spectrum in some way.
Maybe.
Or, it could also be interpreted, I think, that... because he's had to reconcile with the fact that he can be this monster and how do I avoid doing this, he's come to terms with the fact that he beat the shit out of somebody. And so describing it in a casual way is nothing to him because he's already I did this. This is a thing that I did and I have to understand that I did this in order for me to not do it again.
See, I think it all stands to make him seem more crazy. I think he's a crazy guy.
Yeah, the way he's
and that's what makes me uncomfortable.
Well, he is definitely, by definition, a crazy person. Yeah. He suffers from rage.
But not
at the very least.
I could still hang out with him kind of crazy. Kind of crazy where I wouldn't want to come across him, in a dark alley kind of crazy.
He's definitely...
He makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, he's definitely somebody that if he was a friend of mine and I found out that he has these tendencies, whatever the illness might be, whether it's rage or something a little bit more complicated, I would definitely have to then, recalculate how I interacted with him, period, and if I wanted to continue being friends with him, for sure.
I think he's a crazy psycho killer. That's... where I am right
now. It's definitely the vibe they're throwing.
I know.
For this
which makes me think that it's a red herring.
And I'm soaking it all up.
I know. I'm right there with you. I want him to be the bad guy. I'm so ready for him to be evil.
And
I'm ready for him to just get
I'm ready for him to get slashed.
Yeah.
That's what that's where I am. And of course it's all something that the author is trying to.
Right. Hopefully it's by design.
Yeah, hopefully it's by design. But he makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I want to root for him.
No, we're not rooting for him. I already decided.
I agree. I'm not on Finn's team.
We're Team Layla, I think. No, I'm Team Siobhan.
When does Siobhan come back?
I kind of hope that she comes back. I want her to.
I don't know. Everybody how crazy he is.
What if it's her brothers or something? I don't know. There could be something there. Maybe I'm just...
I think it's a pretty isolated story. I think it's only going to have to do with the characters we already know.
The handful that we already have met.
Yeah, I think we've met everybody at this point. Everyone's parents are dead as well.
All
so
the
it's kind of
dead.
Yeah. But Finn's also 41. So they're in their middle ages.
It's
even
weird.
though Layla's the youngest of everybody, she's only 8 years younger than him.
No, she's
because she was 18 whenever they met, and he was 27.
Oh yeah.
So she's 9 years younger than him.
And then right
give or
before
take
she
a few
was
months.
20, she died. So it was like a year and a half there together, right?
Quote unquote died.
Disappeared
on her right before she was going to be 20. Because it was like in March or something, and her birthday was in April, which was going to be when he proposed.
But then it's 13 years from her death now, so she's 33.
Well, and how weird is it that he just started, like, he got with his sister
I forgot.
11 years later? Like, what made them connect?
Yeah.
It
Don't
told.
like that.
It said. It was just like they got close because of, first they, meet in person for the first time because of the ceremony or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's also part of how she, meets Harry and everything for the service and gets the connection like, well, I want to be an illustrator. And so to do that, I should go to London to do so, a big city. And then, so she's like, well, I know somebody that lives in London. This guy, Harry, who is, best friends with my late sister's presumably soon to be husband. And so I'm going to, contact him and stay there, and that'll be my in into London. And so then, obviously Finn and Harry are still friends and they work together. So they meet up. And so then Ellen starts spending time with with Finn. And then that's, like they're, and he's constantly thinking about how they want to get away from the memory of Layla. But that's literally the binding agent that brought them together to begin with. So that's how they got together.
Yeah, I don't like it.
No, I mean, and he also even externalizes everybody else's view, and and people don't like it, and I can see why people don't like it. But it is what it is. We fell in love, and that's what it is. So I mean, yes, it's not the greatest of situations.
No,
it's just a situation at hand.
Well, just knowing Finn the way that we know him, I feel like it wasn't love.
But I feel like we don't know a lot about him. Like I was saying earlier, we know two things: that he's ever from Rage, and that he's, got some sort of unidentified personality trait where he's like good at some things, kind of an idiot in other things. He's obsessive about Layla because she represents something that he kind of once had, probably whenever he lived in a small Irish town, we presume, and came to London, had to abandon all of that because of who he is, and now lives in this, high stakes, high speed, big city lifestyle, and doesn't like the people that are in that lifestyle. So he's obsessive about this thing that represents something that he used to be and could maybe have again. And that's not healthy, but that's what it is. And I think that's a little bit more innocent than you might think.
No, he's a creepy psycho killer, is what I think. And I absolutely see what you're saying. I just don't like him. So I can't.
You don't have to.
I can't put
I don't think
him
he's
in
necessarily
that box.
I think that maybe, or I hope for him to be a good guy.
And
good people are capable of terrible things, as we have seen even with him and, other stories ever. Mm-hmm. But I just want to root for him. I want him to be able to control the things that are bad about himself and come out in a positive way.
That's really interesting because I did not think that at all at any point. I was like, nope. Dating his sister's, his fiance's sister.
It's definitely not a good situation.
He beats women, beats his friends. Don't like it. He's dumb and doesn't get the Russian doll.
I think not being able to get that was just it's a little on the nose.
And how is she still in love with him?
We don't know what she's
I don't think she is.
I know, but why would he believe she's
I don't know. Well, see,
because he's kind of dumb. And then we also don't know what it is that she's been through.
Right. We don't know what she's been through. We don't know that much about anybody still.
Yeah.
No. Which you've mentioned.
So far, the character development has not happened. I think that's just because the point of the first section was just to get to the catalyst and get to, get everything in gear.
But as it is right now, I've created a bunch of backstory in my mind.
Right.
And the backstory that I've created, I'm like, nope, don't like that guy.
Yeah, I've done the same too. I'm projecting, I guess, onto him. Maybe not like myself, but the backstory that I created. And he definitely doesn't seem like he's into, Ellen because it's Ellen. It seems like this is the closest thing to what he had. So he's like grasping at straws.
Well, I think and
I know that's what
he speaks to that a couple of times as well.
And I'm sure that's what people accuse him of too, and why they think it's gross or whatever. And I mean, I'm sure he probably doesn't think that himself. Like he probably genuinely believes he's in love with her. But I just don't think he actually is, just because of how obsessed he is still with Layla. I mean, it's like...
Well, I think that you could potentially... I think that a lot of the general...
People, sure, but I just... I mean, it's very clear he still loves Layla.
I think that even if if it starts in if it starts like in the wrong place, it can still grow into the right thing. It's a lot more difficult that way, and probably has like a next to 0% chance. But
lower
you know,
chances.
I just don't think that it's a good idea to presume on the nature of anyone's feelings.
That's fair, and he does genuinely seem to want Ellen to be comfortable. Like, it makes him uncomfortable when he sees that she's shuffling around nervous because she was playing with her dolls. And he's like, well, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable around me. I've done that in the past with people. Like, he even reflected, because you see some growth there. Like, okay, cool. He realizes he's kind of crazy, you know? And she knows it, but she's, I guess, a loving woman. And
I don't know.
Like, I don't know.
I think that maybe he has definitively said, like, who has seen him in those states or who is aware that he's been in those states before, but I can't remember. I don't know if Ellen has actually. I think the first time that she sees it is whenever he hits the bar at Ruby's, at the Jackdaw.
Well, I don't know, because when that happened, he talked about, like, oh, she saw me hit the bar, she's gonna... It's like that's not necessarily a super threatening gesture. I feel like there's some more there. Like, she has seen like that kind of behavior from him before, because
even if it's just him like tensing up and like bringing himself back down.
So I feel like she's at least privy to.
She seems a lot smarter than Layla.
The girl at the bar?
I think so.
Really? His ex-girlfriend?
Yeah. They
Why
dated
is that so cool with Ellen or whatever? Like,
I think this is also a little bit of what we were talking about. Yeah, what we were talking about before we were, started recording in earnest, was that it's a bit of a different environment than we're used to, even though we're from a relatively small town.
I've literally never dated anyone that would be cool with that, though, I don't think.
Because we're not British.
Right.
Yeah, but we were small town.
But also think about it, we were not only in a small town, but we were like in an even smaller niche of people where we all just dated each other.
No, and
like literally you ran out of people to date in band.
It's a small community in a small town.
And it just happened. Now, none of them were I shouldn't say none of them. The majority of them weren't very serious relationships, so the stakes weren't that high. And if
it's high school.
Suddenly your friend is dating the person you were dating 3 months ago, you might be upset for half a second, but then you're like, well, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Because now I'm also dating his previous girlfriend.
But you do bring up a good point, though, because I hadn't really thought about it that much, like how... Ruby and Ellen would actually feel about each other, because they do
Ellen
both
doesn't seem cool with her.
They haven't
you don't
seen.
I think she seems okay. That I don't know. It's very weird.
I think that Ellen, from what we're given, is just very mature and self-aware, and she spent a lot of time having to deal with her alcoholic, abusive father.
She's definitely
she's got like
mature.
a very adult perspective on everything.
Or that's one possibility. Or on the other side of that coin, she had an abusive father. She's in a super abusive relationship, so she's just beaten down and is just like accepting of whatever, because she's not being beaten anymore.
She's probably kind of drawn to this. Would you say that there's like
attracted to that kind of?
I don't want to I feel like that's almost like sexist saying that she would be attracted to that kind of guy, but that's a thing that happens.
That's not
happens
a sexist thing.
On all sides of the gender spectrum.
Yeah, I mean it's.
I'm sure it's just a thing that people do.
Yeah, and I mean I know their relationships, vice versa.
But she does seem to so as much as because again this is all from Finn's eyes so far, she is pretty subdued, and I don't even know that using the word obey is necessarily the right description of it, but she obeys a lot of the non-verbal rules that exist in their relationship, like not going into the office or whatever.
So maybe that's why the relationship between her and Ruby is as weird as it is. Cause
I think that Ruby's pretty, because even Finn says what you see is what you get with her, and she's just straightforward and she's over it, whatever.
Yeah.
Like as over it as any healthy adult would be. Maybe she's still like, it kind of sucks that you did me wrong like that, but whatever, it's over, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to let this affect my life.
She's just a Madame Rose Murda. Just
right, yeah, pretty much.
With her dog.
But then even when they're walking back from the bar, Ellen does take a little bit of a lead, because she asked him once, what was that all about? He's like, oh, there's nothing, blah, 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 don't worry about it. And then he kind of hopes that she'll let it drop. And then she again is like, no, what was that? So she's not completely subdued.
He did think it was
whenever it matters, she will press. Well, he wasn't expecting it, but I don't think he resented that. There's a difference between expectation and resentment.
But if you're not expecting it, then it's an unusual behavior for her, which means that she doesn't often push back on stuff.
Yeah, that's probably...
And maybe most times it's just not important. But if this is one of the first times that she's seen him actually do something of that nature, then it's an important thing that she wants to be able to talk about, maybe.
It's a newly introduced behavior or something.
Right.
So we haven't mentioned it yet, but my favorite character in the book is Peggy.
Peggy's great.
I love her. I love that her name is Peggy. I need more Peggy. I think she should be featured more prominently, is what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the flashbacks when she's still young and can go on the walks.
She's a little pupper.
Yeah, because she can't go on the walks anymore.
She's too
old. Not the long walks.
Not the long walks.
Just into town. Just to get the bread in the morning.
But the fact that they get to take Peggy places kind of speaks to it being a little small, like very quaint little British town. Because they're like, we can take Peggy to the bar.
Just a little village.
Because we know that Buster will be there to hang out.
Right, drinking down the watered down beer.
Yeah, so I don't really know what the purpose of Peggy is. I don't know if they're trying to make
it'll be interesting to see if we get some perspective from Ellen, because she has to know what Peggy represents.
Layla?
Yeah. And so it would be interesting to see what that means to her. And certainly that Peggy is so keyed into Ellen and seems to, they haven't spent a lot of time really describing the dynamics between the dog and the people, but
they do enough of it though.
The first time that we see Peggy is whenever he comes home and the Russian doll shows up for the first time, the first one, and Peggy's all weirded out because Ellen's all weirded out. So I think that the dog is a little closer to Ellen maybe than Finn for whatever reason. But I really don't know. I might just be making that up because that's the initial interaction we get with Peggy, and so I just immediately paint that picture.
Put them together. I wondered if she even included Peggy in the story to kind of make Finn seem a little more human, because
maybe so.
He clearly has. He's a caretaker, at least to a certain degree, but I feel like it's creating this false character trait about him because he's just a crazy psycho killer.
It's based on his obsessive nature with Layla. True,
I think that's
you're
what
right.
I
think so. Yeah, it does make him seem a little more human. But then when you dive deep into what Peggy means, it's like, well, maybe he's a little crazier now.
He's a little creepier than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe Peggy is really just like another, just a dog. But I feel like there's more to her than that.
She definitely started off as being representative of Layla.
Yeah.
That was literally the whole reason that he picked her as opposed to any of the other dogs that they had gone to several different homes, and not found one, and then he latches onto her because it's the same hair color.
Same hair color balance.
But then, in time, and certainly with all the effort that he's put into not thinking about Layla every single day and sort of stuff like that, the relationship with a living thing and not just an inanimate object that reminds you of Layla, it is a thing that you have your own relationship with, I would assume would evolve into just being something a little bit more than only representing Layla anymore.
Yeah. Do you think that anything different would have happened if he had told Ellen about the second Russian doll? Like, do you think it would have put her on red alert so that when the third instance of the doll with the car happened, she would have seen and known for sure it was Layla?
Well, the third one was with the car. The fourth one was the bill at the bar.
First one she found
on the doorstep.
Yeah. Second one was on the wall. The third one was on the car, and then the fourth one was in the bill. The bill.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, the fifth one was on the tree stump. At the very end. He goes
so there is one on the tree stump, or was just that it was shaped like the Russian doll?
I remember, what I remember from when I read it last night was that when he got up to the tree stump, he saw the tree stump, and they're placed in the middle of the tree stump was another Russian doll.
Yeah, I didn't.
You can't just buy the...
Also, where is she? She's got a lot of money. She's buying whole Russian doll sets just to use the smallest one.
I hope that we find her house and it's just full of
filled with all the Russian dolls.
Yeah, 90%.
No, you
can small ones.
You can buy the babies in bulk on eBay, I'm sure.
Oh, you can just buy the parts. Yeah.
Well, it was dated 06, right? Like when
eBay.
Whenever
they start, I think it's
11 years or 12 years or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's
Almost
more or less present day.
Present day.
Like 2016, 2017, something like that.
Okay, they're not eBay. She gets them on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Amazon.co.uk.
They still eBay stuff.
Baby Russian dolls. Yeah, I know, but
Nobody
that's not where
uses eBay
she's.
anymore.
That's not where she's getting her.
That's not where she's
Right,
getting.
She's got a different supplier for that.
Right.
So I like the way the book is set up, that you are in the present and then you jump back and then you're in the present.
I did like that mechanic, certainly for it to just end up being that was the letter that he left for her at the cottage. Was all of the past sections that we had was just all the different sections of the letter. I thought that was, interesting. And like about halfway through, I realized that maybe there was something like that of that nature, because he is talking to her in all the passages. Maybe you won't remember this or something like that.
Yeah.
So I knew that it was either going to end up being like something, because they also kept saying what happened that night. And we don't find out, the truth of what happened, or as much as the truth as he knows, until very close to the end. So I thought maybe, what happened that night was they have this conversation and that leads to something else and blah, blah, blah. But then it just ends up being the letter on the desk. But I still thought that was an interesting mechanic.
I thought that was a cool device by the author, because I keep bringing this up, but it just can't get past it how simple the writing is. Because, like I said, it's like without some of the adult themes, it's totally a kid's book. Like a 10-year-old could read this book and understand it, because it's just very simple. But so I think there's a little more interest because she does do the back and forth, which is kind of cool. So I guess that's a way you can keep things really simple, but also keep it moving. Right. So I like that.
And it'll be interesting to see if, like you were talking about before we were recording, that when we change perspectives to another character, if the writing style doesn't then change as well.
To kind of fit the,
I'm really looking forward to see if there's any change. Like, because...
That might be asking for too much.
Well,
we're wanting a king and we're getting a Paris, so we need to...
Caitlin had a good test of, like, if we can pull a page from section 2 and a page from section 1 and tell that they're different people. Yeah. That would be a cool test to see, like,
like how well executed.
I would think that that's a fairly good litmus test for any story that jumps perspectives between characters, though.
For you to be able to take it out of context and still identify.
And how different those pages are can then show the level of skill and having done that.
Yeah,
That's what he does in Game of Thrones. It's a very cinematic way to do things, I think, too. It fits very well for, like, at least in my head, Game of Thrones was written by her character, and it felt kind of almost like a play every time because of that. So I feel like because it's, a person's point of view and it hops, I feel like it's very easy to digest. It's very cinematic.
Right.
I don't know.
I think in A Song of Ice and Fire, like, while we're in some of those characters' heads, it's not like always 100% their perspective. Like, it'll still be like, and then all of a sudden something came crashing down from the mountain or something like that. It's not.
But it's about them.
Whereas in this, it's everything is literally Finn saying, and then I saw something like this or blah, blah, blah. And then that's when I noticed that Layla had stopped or something like that.
It's like a true first person.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that it was all the letter that y'all just said. When y'all said that, I was like, what? Oh, is it like visually obvious or is it... Or did you just put it together from reading? Because like,
it's visually obvious because the last flashback section ends in him saying, "So when you find this letter, if you ever come back, I'm leaving the cottage. I'm not going to come back here. I'm going to go live with Harry, who's going to save my ass again."
Yeah, for some reason I didn't put it together that it was the whole thing was the letter. I thought that he had just written like he was reading because he was at the cottage, right? Like when he was remembering that part. Wasn't he literally there?
Yes, and that's when he finds a break in the dust that is in the shape of a letter.
And honestly, in my head, I thought he was just like remembering like the last part of the letter. Like I didn't think that they were all.
I think that he does because there's more than once that he sees the ghost of himself from the past, and I think that he does see himself sitting down at the table writing the letter.
Yeah.
And then he notices that where he had left the letter, there's considerably less dust. So in the past week or so, someone has been to the cottage and gotten the letter. And so that's presumably Layla had gotten to the cottage, got the letter, read it, and then that's when she decided that she would, start this game, whatever her end goal is. And that's my biggest question right now is what is her purpose?
We need to know what happened to figure out why she's playing this game with him. Because
did she run away or did she get taken? I think that's the biggest question as to what happened, because that dictates a lot of motive for her.
Do y'all think we know everything that he knows, that he thinks he knows?
I think we know everything that he knows at this point.
Okay. I agree. I think we know everything that he knows, but
we don't know what happened.
He hasn't shared everything with us, and
he doesn't know what happened during the blackout.
Right,
but he knows everything. He told us everything that happened up to and immediately after.
So
and we have gotten the truth being in his mind. So that's the only way to get it.
I don't know. I want there to be I want it to have been something really crazy happened during that period, and she's just been stewing on it for 13 years, and it's been plotting and planning,
revenge
some
plot,
big thing. But I don't know if that's actually going to happen, because I don't think that much time. That's the only incident that we know about, right? That there's only this one thing. I just can't imagine anyone harboring 13 years worth of darkness
over one
outburst. So
I mean, I guess it could have gotten sour when he found out that the sister and him were getting together, but then even still, it doesn't seem like it would be to this degree.
Yeah, it's not like she tried to come back a year later.
No.
And it was just like, oh, it only took you that long to fucking get in bed with my sister? No, it took over a decade.
Yeah. So maybe she's crazy too. I don't know.
She seems to be, she's very spontaneous, and she's considerably more outspoken than Ellen is. These are comparisons that have been given to us by Finn.
Mm-hmm. But she's also a country bumpkin.
Yeah.
So she's simple still.
You think that's where Layla could have gone, just somewhere in the country, in her old life, maybe?
Yeah. How long did she stay in France?
Yeah. Maybe
what did she do when she got back to the UK?
I mean, the titles Bring Me Back.
Did she just putter around Europe for a while? I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't either. See, so I am very excited about that, because I mentioned earlier that there are parts of it that I'm a little it's a little boring.
A lot of the initial stuff was a little see-through.
Really simple. It's slow to develop. The Ruby Dolphin is a dumb thing. He went off on a dumb path. But I don't know, I'm hopeful, I guess, for what comes next, because maybe it'll be really exciting.
It feels like a red herring, like y'all have been saying, it's just too easy.
Well, of course, any good thriller is going to have some amount of that, but it's fun when you...
Have you read a lot of thriller?
That's one of my favorite genres.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I don't read that genre very often, so most of the Stephen King stuff that I've even read is the Gunslinger series, and that's not really thriller. It's just a cool series that he wrote. And so, I've read a few of his horror books, and I'm trying to think of other thrillers I might have read, but this is kind of one of the first. So does this fit the genre, you think, or what does it feel like to you right now?
I feel like it fits the thriller. The author has thrown a bunch of stuff in there that is going to lead us down a path, and then you're going to find out later, let's say if she's done a good job of telling this story, then she's opened a bunch of threads for you to follow, and so you'll be spending this whole section working out what the email address means, but while you're doing that and as you're reading through it, you're totally missing this whole other part, and then it's a flip back to that page kind of book. Where you have to
Do you have the physical book, or are you a reader?
I rode my bike to the library on Saturday and checked it out. So I'm going extra old school with it. So I have a hard copy. I don't do e-readers that much. It's not my favorite way to read a book.
I definitely prefer to have the physical copy as well, but certainly I don't have anywhere to store books right now. They're all just sitting on the top shelf in my closet, what I do have. And that's 1/10 of the books that I own. The rest of them are back in Portland, just sitting in the closet. Because I don't have a bookshelf up here. Yeah. I don't have a truck to bring the bookshelf that I had down there. And then Eric went ahead and claimed that bookshelf anyway, so it's not even mine anymore. So I need to buy a bookshelf.
You can get you a bookshelf.
And so since we're buying a book, every month and a half, I need to just stick on my Kindle. And then the Kindle, I've got the Paperwhite, so I can read it outside really easily if I want to. It's just a little more versatile.
It's compact. You can just hold it with one hand. I totally get it.
It's just when you said flipping back, that was something I listen to most of these books, so
you do miss out on being able to flip back.
And I miss little details. I know when I physically read it, I get a lot more details out of it. If I'm listening to it and really focused in, I can get. I'd say probably still only 90% of it. Like, I'm still missing a little bit just because.
Well, like we've talked about on the show several times, listening is such an inherently more passive task than to be physically reading.
And your brain absorbs information differently depending on how it's being presented to you. So if you're listening to something versus using parts of your body to actually, well, I guess you're using your ears when you're.
But no, I know what you mean. You're doing several things. Like at least when I read it, like I'm not.
You're almost certainly doing nothing
I'm
else.
seeing it and hearing it, and I'm not doing anything else.
You can't. Yeah, you can't. That's one of the things Will and I talk about a lot. Is why probably we like anime so much. Is because you can't do anything but watch it because it's in Japanese.
And
so
that's
you have
why
to read the bottom.
I don't like anime.
Right?
I'm like, I don't want to do that.
No, it's interesting just because it brings me so focused into it, and you can't really pay attention to anything else. And I guess. Not reading many thrillers and like I don't know if I've really done that much with books, like flipping back just to, and like I know I
have on occasion if it reminds me of something like, am I remembering this correctly? I'll go back and be like, no, I didn't remember that correctly or whatever. Yeah, you know?
I find it with thrillers. That's the genre where I find myself doing that more than any other because. Usually,
I think it's sort of by design that way.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying, it puts all the threads out there, and some of them may or may not matter, and whatever. And
but
part of the fun is finding the ones that do matter.
Right?
No, I might. Yeah, I mean, I might have to get the physical book just so that I can do that for next week,
so
just
you can
to
flip
see.
Back?
Really? No, I'm not. Yeah,
go old school and check it out.
It's a lot easier to do it with a physical book than with a Kindle.
I was like, as you said, go to the library. I was like, I could because I called them and I was like, do y'all do volunteer stuff? Thinking about like literally how much time we spend with books on the show. I was like, I should do stuff for the library. And they're like, we'd love it if you came by. So I should go. And Pflugerville's got a cool little library. So yeah, I think I will actually for this next week. Like literally so I can try and
just
flip around. Because thrillers, like I just said, it's kind of a new genre for me. So like I don't even know if I really know how to read them. So it's like it's interesting to hear different things to do. I don't think
the good thing about narrative. The good thing about narrative is you just read it the way that you want. And if you're as long as you're getting the narrative, then you're not doing it the wrong way.
But it is fun.
You can definitely be better at it.
It can be better.
But that is the fun thing is because, like I said, if she's doing what it seems like she's doing, she's throwing a bunch of stuff out for you, and so you can like flip back to a page that you've already read, like I don't know, 100 pages from now, and be like, oh yeah, that was what she said.
Okay.
Of course, I'm also like, I don't always remember details, but I can
remember
like where in the book it is, and then I see it, I'm like, oh, that was why they even mentioned the Russian dolls. Like that makes sense now because there's like something. I don't know, like the first time she introduces, or at least from what I can remember, the first time she introduced just how big Finn is, was just talking about his shoes, and she just put that in there. And I think there's another time where she, maybe before that, I know for sure after that, she mentioned him ducking through a doorway, but it wasn't like, he wasn't explicitly described as being
giant.
Yeah, and so like...
Just tall.
Right, but that's kind of a thing that I like about that genre is it seems like there's a little bit more of that. I think maybe to make it a little more mysterious, like like these details float at you kind of, and sometimes they stick and sometimes they don't, and so that's where the flipping back comes in, because you can go back and see something that floated past you, which is kind of cool. But
do you read like mystery books very often? Does this feel at all like a mystery or not? Really?
I don't read mystery books as often. I mean, well, there's always some level of mystery in a thriller.
Yeah,
and probably vice versa. But I don't know. The only mystery book I can think of, I know I've read more, but the only one I can think of is The Westing Game, and that's a kid's book. It's a very good kid's book. But that's a mystery. It's like a murder mystery.
I read a Stephen King murder mystery, actually, now that
I
think about it. Yeah, Mr. Mercedes. It was good, but it was, it was thriller too, so it was...
Well, the thing about King is that he sort of transcends genre, and that a bunch of different things are always incorporated in his work. There's an element of thriller, an element of horror, more predominantly than anything. Horror is pretty much in all of his books.
A lot of, almost all fiction.
Right. Every now and then he'll go into fantasy stuff like with the Gunslinger and all of that. And
then he wrote a book on writing. So he wrote
Was that also a horror book? These are the horrors of being an author.
It was probably scary to read because he was like, if you don't finish your piece of work in 2 months, you're not really dead.
I was like, that's a very inside baseball horror novel.
It was like hardcore. He was like, it was just like, you should be pumping out these books if you're a real author. I was like, I guess, dude. I mean, you did it, and then you did it under a pseudonym, like a fake.
Just to see if you could do it again.
Yeah, and he did. Yeah, what else do y'all think could happen? Like, I mean, where do you see it going?
I honestly don't know. I have stuff that I want to happen. I have ideas of things I think would be really cool, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. And I feel like I'm fairly astute. Like I can, pretty reasonably good at figuring that kind of stuff out. Like when you watch a movie or whatever, you're like, oh, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. So I feel like I can do that fairly well with books for the most part, but I don't know right now.
Yeah, I think that might be part of the nature of us only having one perspective so far.
Right.
And from somebody that we've decided is dumb, you know?
Idiot, psycho, killer.
So, you know, somebody that we've now seen missed several things, and that's the only perspective that we have. And it being, like we were saying, like a true first-person perspective so far, where we're not even like pseudo-omnisciently seeing everything happening around one person. We're only seeing what the one person sees.
Right.
So there's a lot that is yet to be revealed, and so we just don't have a lot to go off of.
I think some of the big assumptions we've made, like with who that she had I guess an affair. I guess it's technically an affair. But
yeah.
Because
the textbook definition of the affair implies that you're married, I think.
I don't think so. Does it really?
That's always been my understanding. Like, it's an affair if you're a married person and you cheat on your spouse. It's always been my understanding.
Don't get into a relationship with Will. It's like, not an affair if we're not married.
Well, it's still cheating, but I think the definition of the word.
Textbook definition. I don't know.
I've never even looked it up, but that's just the context clues that I've taken in life have given me that belief.
Well, I think so. Like our big assumption on her affair, I guess, with I don't think it would be too unlikely for it to be Harry, but for it to be. I mean, she already told us, so that's not really like we figured out that she had an affair, but
yeah,
as it was,
we don't know with whom,
right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't know with whom because he killed her before it could even come about.
But are there any like other big assumptions that we have made? Like, because I don't know what Ellen's gonna feel when any of it comes back to her, if it does, because he hasn't told her anything, you know. Like, I don't know. Like we said earlier, I don't even know if it made a difference if he had told her.
I think that her character could be the biggest question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've also assumed that Layla's alive. We don't know.
That's the assumption I'm making right now. That's the storyline that I think.
And that's a big assumption still, because it's not...
because it could still be somebody masquerading.
It literally could be Ellen that I accidentally overheard, you know? And
it
talking
could
about
possibly
Layla,
be
like,
Ellen.
I don't know.
Could be Ellen, could be Peggy, we don't know.
Could be Peggy.
Or Ruby. I mean, she might have some weird...
That would be so weird.
I can't see her being more than just a character that's, like, moving the story along, but I don't know. It could be Ruby.
Yeah.
I wanted to be Peggy. I call her Peg.
Peg.
Like, come on, Peg. So
you're reading.
I just want more Peggy, less Finn, and that's right.
That's all we need.
That's all we need. Like,
if Peggy could just go off on her own adventure, this could turn into a Redwall-esque story.
Mm-hmm. I would love that. But yeah, so I think we've had two pretty big assumptions that we've kind of...
Yeah, I think that Layla's alive. I think that it's Layla doing this. Why?
Right.
Is the bigger question in my opinion.
We need to know the why.
And then we need to know... Yeah, I guess
the
why would be answering what happened, I guess.
And,
right, yeah. And even if we don't get the why in the first half of this next section, we've got to find out, like, what happened. Was she taken or did she run away? Yeah, and when she ran away, did she then, have a bunch of experiences in Europe or whatever? Or did she come back immediately and been trying to figure out this whole time how to reconnect with Finn? How much does Harry know?
Or does it go into some weird, almost fantasy thing? Like she's a ghost?
Oh, that would be a really interesting twist.
So
as if
it
becomes mildly supernatural.
And that's where the Bring Me Back comes in?
Oh, look at that. That could be it.
Yeah, that would be really
and that could
interesting.
be interesting, and that could explain why. Like if you saw one of your brothers off in the distance, you would recognize pretty quickly that it was Eric or Alex. Like that would be hard to do. So maybe that could explain why she wasn't like, that was absolutely Layla, because it was like a ghost or something.
Right.
There might not be anything there, but that could be interesting.
I would be happy with that twist.
I would be happy with that.
I would too, yeah.
And then that would certainly fill in some of the gaps without her having to fill them in.
And that's such a commonly used and kind of easy, I don't want to say cop out, but kind of cop out, because anytime that magic is involved, if something gets complicated and you don't know how to explain it, it's like, well, it's magic, so you don't have to explain it.
Right. But, and for the most part, everyone's accepting of that. They're like, yeah,
right,
magic.
Yeah, it's magic, duh.
Yeah,
carry on.
There are no set rules of magic because magic doesn't exist.
So maybe that's where the Bring Me Back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be...
I think I could appreciate that.
I think I could too. Yeah. And I just now thought of that as even a possibility. When you said that,
I was like, this is
but it gave me goosebumps a little bit, so... I don't know.
I would be happy to see that.
I would be too. So we'll just have to...
I think I'm just excited to see whatever's going to happen next. And maybe it's because nothing has happened so far.
Nothing has happened. We've learned...
For a long bit of reading too. And that is because half of it was flashback.
Yeah.
Because really each chapter was pretty evenly matched. It's only about 50-ish pages of reading of stuff that actually happened, which is a good introduction size, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So it makes sense. But we also spent 50 pages flashing back to get context for Finn as a character.
And still didn't learn that much
Yeah. I have a lot of problem with one-dimensional characters, and Finn is very one-dimensional at this point.
Yeah.
And that always bothers me with writing. But then again, it's also only been 50 pages. So.
Only been 50 pages. Yep. Also, it's a very quick read, because I read it over 2 days, and I was like, oh, there we go.
Yeah, I did a little bit of reading at work yesterday, and then I came home and just plowed through the rest of it after Good Omens. So it's quick and engaging. Yeah, there wasn't a point at all that I was just like, I gotta get through it. I was, relatively engaged the whole time.
It's just a couple hours of listening, so it wasn't,
Yeah. I hope that it doesn't end up being overly simple throughout the entire thing.
I'll be disappointed.
And then it's just sort of like young author-y, and it's just like 2 sides in a row, where the whole time I was like just engaged and didn't care, and then everything at the end just comes together in loose knots that I didn't think made any sense.
Yeah.
I just don't want to do that again immediately after having done it.
I didn't like, honestly, like just the thing that set me off in the beginning was just that we already knew that there wasn't the whole truth with what he told the cops. It's like that's straight out, like he even thinks like...
Well, everybody lies to the cops, right?
I know, but it's just like they make it
I didn't know that I was speeding. Everybody lies to the cops.
No, I know, but just to give it to us like that right off the bat, it's like already putting such a shadow on this character, when I would have liked to have at least had a little bit more mystery there to find out that, like, okay, well, he's...
So you would have maybe not wanted that...
I wouldn't have wanted him to say...
The transcript with the cop, like you would not want that to be at the beginning of the book?
I'm fine with that being there, I just don't want him saying at the end of it, but that's not all that happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a constructed, mislead.
Yeah, I mean, that was literally on the hook page.
Right.
And that's where it probably could have stayed, because, then it would have made me confused. Like, I wonder if that is all that.
I think it's on the hook page because it's immediately given at the end of the first chapter.
Yeah.
If that was going to be a reveal halfway through the first section of reading, it would have been like, well, God, why did you give that away on the hook?
See, that's what I would have liked.
That's like the Terminator 2 issue, where you gave away the entire plot point of the movie in the trailer.
See, that's what I was thinking. It felt a little more simple because of that, I guess, is what maybe that's what I'm going to gripe about. Maybe I'm just figuring it out now.
And that's just in general my problem with previews and trailers and hook pages. I try to stay away from that stuff.
I do too.
I think it's a little bit more necessary for what we want for this show that we do is to be able to describe, what is it we're going to read and try to get, because we are kind of asking a lot of some of the listeners to pick up a new book every month and a half in addition to whatever they might want to read. Because so far on the whole, there's been we decide what the book is, and it's just what we want to do.
Yeah.
So we're asking them to read a book that they might not be interested in. And so we need to also give them the hook to without them even having to put the effort in
stuff.
seeking out the hook.
Right, but we don't need all of that for Toy Story 4. Like, I'm going to go see that movie. I'm literally already
it's got a built-in audience. Yeah. We don't need that sort of stuff.
So when I was at the movies the other day and I saw that they were going to do that trailer, I was like, nope. So I closed up my ears, closed up my eyeballs, and I tried not to, because I don't want to know.
That's half the reason I don't like going to theaters.
Yes, because I love going to the movies, but I hate seeing all the good bits of all the movies that you're already going to see. Like all the funny stuff. So,
and certainly for like big budget movies that they show, 8 different trailers over the course of a year and a half before it comes out. If you go to the movies regularly, you'll see every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I hate doing that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's like people who were like, "Oh, yeah, you can't believe you don't watch the next time on Game of Thrones." And I was like, "That's not how storytelling works. I don't end a chapter and then read 3 random sentences from the next chapter. That's stupid." So the story is designed to be delivered in a certain way without me cheating that. It's weird.
It's just not necessary.
So for Game of Thrones,
honestly, everybody can intake everything the way that they want to, but. And I guess maybe it's just because I'm also kind of a bit of a purist in every other aspect of, my life, where I want to take in the thing in the way that it was designed to be given.
This will drive you crazy then. For Game of Thrones, book 4 and 5, I went online and there was like a fan merge of the 2 books to make it linear. Where they fused all the chapters together, but it was the 2 books put in one.
Oh, honey, no.
And that's not how he delivered it as a medium. George R. Martin released it as 2 books, and real fans that were reading back then had to wait however many years between.
I think that
for me, it was fun to split up, but it drove people crazy when I told them they're just like, you can't do it out of order, and I was like, but that's how I wanted to hear it.
Was that your first introduction
first
to?
read through? That's how I did it.
Did you? So I don't know.
Wait, your first read through was then merged, or your first read? Oh, okay.
And you had seen episode, like you knew what was going to happen already?
No, I hadn't. This was when the show was not caught up to the books yet.
Okay.
And I was reading the books to get more material because I loved the show so much, so I wanted more.
I think that's fine. That doesn't bother me the way.
Yeah, I think that if I did it, I would read them the way intended first, not separate novels. But the thing is that he was at first not writing them separated.
That's why
he then realized that they were going to be 2 books worth of story for the section that he was writing, and so it was like, okay, well, I'll divide them up into 2, parallel timelines. Not timelines, but whatever.
They go the same.
And they'll be that way. So it started off being a completely linear thing. And then ended up not being. So it's kind of a gray area as to what he actually intended.
Yeah.
But I think that even despite that, reading them separately and then going back and reading them merged would be a cool way to intake the story because you get it the way he intended or whatever. And then certainly once he realized that he was going to write them separately, he then started writing them separately. Right. And so would seed things in a very, deliberate way. And then if you could read them separately and then read them merged, you could appreciate that a little bit more, I think.
I've done it both. I've done both now. I listened to it
but in the wrong order.
Well, I did it in the wrong order. Yeah, I listened to it merged and then separate.
You heathen.
But it was just. I was just like, this book is going to be mine. I'm going to take it how I want to.
Yeah, that like I said, that doesn't bother me in the same way that a preview of a movie where you get 8 different previews before the movie and you're getting like all the best bits. Kids' movies are the worst about that. It drives me crazy. So Hunter has a little brother he's 11 now, but we used to take him to movies all the time when he was little, and he would be quoting along with the movie because he'd seen so many trailers. And I'm like, dude, why is this fun for you? But it was always like the only funny part of the movie is in the preview. And I'm like, I've already seen that.
Some people Kenneth loves trailers, and he always has.
He would.
He's such like a trailer hog. He watches every single trailer and preview for every single thing that he's interested in. He's always been that.
It doesn't get me pumped. It just irritates me because
it ruins a lot of things in my opinion.
Because you see like the most amazing part. Like if the preview was all material that wasn't in the movie, then I would feel differently about it.
Or if the preview just did maybe like if they wouldn't let them go beyond the first 20% of the movie.
Or if the preview, and sometimes they do this depending on, because it also depends on how much power the director has. Because certainly in a lot of these like very, by the numbers Hollywood movies, The director is literally just there to direct it, and then the studio and the producers have all the control. And the people who do the trailers and stuff aren't even on the same team. It's just
Never thought about that.
It's like another company that Warner Brothers or whatever hires to take just cuts of film that they send them, make a catchy trailer and throw it out there, to spit it out there.
They're doing a pop version of your movie.
Oftentimes they're never even talked to anybody that was on the movie set. But then sometimes, certainly with more sort of like auteur directors, people like Nolan and stuff like that have a very specific vision for what it is that they're doing, and probably never cut deals with movie houses without saying, I get to say everything that fucking happens, don't you tread on me. And so and they'll do trailers that are totally misdirecting and have stuff in them that is designed to be in the trailer and does not exist in the movie.
Pixar does that a lot. Well, especially when it's because they work on these films for 10 years at a time sometimes. Right. So it'll be 5 years out, with the Incredibles 2, and they were showing very little, but it was stuff that wasn't even in the movie at all. And I like stuff like
that too.
That's because you can give the mood and theme of the movie and some of the ideas that are happening without giving away any of the actual plot.
Right.
And I think that's a good way to do it.
But I think that's a good way to do it too. And I feel like you could get a little bit more of that when it's something that's written on the back of a book cover. If you're trying to decide if you're going to read something, I feel like you can get it's easier to convey something without spoiling major plot points. Which I like. So I'm fine reading the back of books. Because it just feels different.
Yeah. No, I think it's an entirely different mindset of how those things come to be.
There's also, like you were saying, you're already decided on seeing Toy Story 4.
Yeah.
There's already... with The Incredibles, when that was the preview, I was like, "That's perfect." They just teased me. I know it's coming, and I'm going.
And you're ready for it.
And I don't need any more details. Don't do any more advertising. You already got me. And so,
I think the counter argument to that would be that they know that they have a built-in audience.
True. That's
so
what
the trailer's not for that built-in audience. The trailer is for the people that aren't already bought in. So how do we get them to come see this movie?
That's what I was trying to think of in just a new medium that didn't have the name behind it, like Pixar or Disney or whatever. I was thinking for when we're picking books and stuff, how do we grab them in, or how do you make a good trailer without giving away all the juicy details? I guess So
it's a whole different art, and I think that's something that should happen with people that are already involved in the product instead of these companies that are literally just around to make trailers for movies.
That's one
just
thing
contracts,
about this is that
cut houses.
I think you're right. On the back of books, they don't have as many spoilers. So a lot of times we go into these books and we don't really know at all, And then as we
had no idea what the fuck was going to happen in Arthur and George. That was ridiculous.
Well, so many times we've said I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm let's go. I've got some guesses, but let's have at it.
I've also said that I think I say that all the time just as filler because I'm trying to gather my thought.
It's your version of
Yeah.
I glanced at the back cover for this one after I'd already read it, and it was leading me down a very different path than what I got from actually reading it, because it was focusing a lot on the relationship of these two lovers, referring to Layla and Finn.
Right,
That's not really what I've gotten from this story at all. I mean, so maybe there's more, maybe the ghost thing. I don't know. Because that would make it more of a love story.
I'm excited to get whatever the next perspective is, which is it almost has to be Layla, because they've given the reveal that it's probably Layla. I think that's a 99% chance at this point. It would be almost a betrayal for it to not be Layla at this point. So with it being the reveal at the end of this section of the book being Layla, we now jump into Layla's head and get some answers.
If it's Layla, you think section 3 will be just back to Finn, or a new embodiment?
I think it'll be
our favorite of the two.
Yeah, how does the structure work? Is it now all Finn, you're back and forth in the past? And then the second one is all Layla, maybe back and forth, for what she's, everything that we've seen happen. We could jump back in time to the beginning of the, where Finn starts off, and, her starting the plan and then enacting the plan, with also cutting in intermittent chapters of what she went through in Europe or whatever.
Yeah, her Paris.
And then the third book is everyone together and what we do after the events, transpire.
Yeah, I don't know. I could. It's hard to imagine that there would be a third person that we're getting perspective of, unless something gets introduced to us in Layla's chapters, which we're just assuming it's Layla's
Right.
next. So if there's some like third party, I don't know,
just like some
like,
person she met.
like Harry. Like
Y,
if Harry was the third section, that wouldn't surprise me at this point. But I don't know
I feel like the third section has to be the resolution, though, right?
But what if...
Because it's divided up in 3 books, and it would be strange for the first 2 books to be not self-contained, but only like a element of the story, and then the third book gets split up into different things. It just wouldn't be congruent with the rest of the writing.
Unless something gets...
I mean, it could...
some kind of resolution in the second part, and then Harry's part is the wrap-up or something afterwards. I don't know.
I could see him bounce between maybe the 2 main people, like maybe between...
Well, I think the third, at least my assumption would be, if this was, very congruent, would be that the first one's all Finn, the second one's all Layla, and then the third one is everybody dealing with the aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, for whatever reason, I can see that being the real thriller part of the book, and being like a Finn and Layla heavy section, and it bounced back between the 2 of them, and we don't know where it's going to go, and that's where the
I think the second section is all Layla, and then we end with Layla, like, having left the tree stump and can hear Finn shouting for her from the bottom of the hill. And then we moved into the third section, and that's what do we now do now that we're all on the same page and we've all arrived at the same point in time.
There's also, this is probably less likely, but Ellen could be the second section.
I was thinking that.
She's another character that we could, there's, I think, enough there for that to be a possibility.
Yeah,
if like all the resolution was through Ellen's eyes.
Or something like that. So I don't know. I think we just need to...
Ellen's a good character, too, so far. At least, as far as I can tell. I like the position she's in because it's kind of juicy. She's almost like the underdog, and yet not a main character.
It's like the bridge between the 2, what we're assuming.
I think she's got more
characters.
at stake than anybody else at this point.
That's probably why I like her, then, I guess. She's got a lot. She's packing.
Maybe
root for everybody. I don't know that I care about Layla, just because we know next to nothing about her except that she's kind of like the firecracker character. She's got that sort of attitude. She kind of fits an archetype, right?
Possibly. We will. Yeah.
And
as of right now, she does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, if this is going to be like we've just been speculating, going to be a Layla, specific section, then we'll learn more about her, and she could subvert that archetype. But for what we've been given, she's definitely, within that just small, Scottish country girl who's...
Which is such a foreign character to me. Like, oh, she's just a down-home country girl from Scotland. Like, okay, whatever that means.
Like Meredith from Brave. You saw that movie.
Meredith. Yeah.
She has a funny accent. That's not your traditional Scottish accent.
Whenever that movie came out, there was a lot of criticism.
I mean, I liked that actress or whatever. I thought it was a cool accent just because I know the actress, but I saw her in Black Mirror and it just doesn't fit with what's going on. I'm just like, what are the words that you're saying?
So I feel special.
The super heavy Scottish accents are like,
it was cool.
You just nod your head. I don't know what you're saying. Those aren't words.
Are we speaking?
Are you having a stroke?
All right. Well, next section next week, right? Section 2.
Section 2. Whatever the title of it is, if there were section titles, I can't remember. It might even just be part 2.
I think it's just called part 2.
Yeah,
I believe that.
I think so.
So we'll see what happens there. And don't forget that on Mondays we're watching Good Omens, we're talking about Good Omens. Hopefully we're not watching it because that means we're procrastinating on our side. It's all out, so if you want to watch the whole thing, watch the whole thing. Obviously, however you want to intake it. We'll be watching it a week at a time because I don't want to be talking about episode 2 with the informed opinion of what happens in episode 3.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing it week by week. See how that goes. We're enjoying it so far. We think it's a pretty funny show. It's a comedy about the end times. And we'll continue to see you Wednesday with this.
Yeah. Check us out on normal social media, dog ears and timestamps.
Everything, right? Ears _stamps on Twitter and Instagram. We don't have a Facebook because fuck Facebook. Dog ears and timestamps at gmail.com if you want to email us like it's 1998.
Email.
And that's about it. Subscribe, like, leave comments, whatever.
Do you want to plug anything to our millions?
We're very influential. We could make or break your career.
I didn't know you were influencers. No, I'm good.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, Caitlin.
Yeah, I had fun. Awesome. This is great.
It would be exciting to have you again for any reason.
We'll have to just wait and see.
Yeah,
I think that's...
But that's it. Okay.
I said all the words.
Tripped over myself there. I'm Will Hedrick.
I'm Jordan Schaffer.
This is Dog Ears and Timestamps. Go Bruins.